To cheese or not to cheese? A question for the ages. A question that has been plaguing mankind ever since we first started experiencing rational thought. And the reason as to why this question is so important to answer is rather quite simple. Because cheesing in a video game means that you are the most heinous, most horrible, degenerate person to have ever lived. Or at least according to the Total War Reddit, as well as quite a vocal minority in my own comment section. So in order to help you guys avoid ever accidentally cheesing in your games, I have taken it upon myself to make a video showcasing some of the worst forms of cheese you can do in your own games. But what is cheese, you might ask? And really, there is pretty much no clear answer and will always depend on the person you ask. But for me, I have no better way of defining it than by giving you specific examples. Starting with one of the most prominent examples of using cheese, using the game's boundaries to your advantage. You see, in pretty much all games, there is a limit to how far you can traverse your surroundings before you either hit an invisible barrier or terrain that will stop you from moving forward. And these can serve as a way to prevent your rear from getting penetrated or protect you from getting surrounded by enemies. In a game such as Age of Empires 4, this offers you a perfect way to wall yourself off from any avenue of attack in a very cheap and effective way, rather than having to spend extra resources to build the Great Wall of China. And as such, this is obviously in fact not cheese, nor is it considered to be such by its community. In Warhammer 3, however, if you ever use the map's borders to cover your flanks from attacks, you are a filthy cheeser and deserve nothing but the worst in life. How dare you exploit the game's limitations in such a way, and undermine the poor developers that spent so much time designing these maps with perfectly uneven terrain to hinder your range units from ever shooting properly, no matter how well you position them. You absolute monster of a person. Then, the next example is using optimal unit compositions or optimal gear for a character. You see, in other RTS styles, such as Age of Empires 4 or Age of Mythology, there are always going to be good units you will want to recruit, and bad units which you will want to avoid. A prime example for this is that you will want to build spearmen when fighting against horsemen or any kind of cavalry, as spearmen do bonus damage against these units. But if the enemy doesn't have cavalry, then there is no reason to get spearmen. Or if you ever want to make an unbeatable unit composition, such as war elephants with healers to keep them alive, or just a whole bunch of laser crocodiles to melt through anything they come across, well, in these games, that is perfectly fine, and even suggested by its community. In the case of if you're playing a ARPG like Path of Exile 2, when making a warrior character, it only makes sense to get gear and bonuses for your character that will boost your melee capabilities, rather than getting bonuses that boost your spellcasting. This is only natural and isn't considered to be cheese. However, when playing Warhammer 3, if you even have the slightest imbalance in your armies, where you have more range units than you have melee units, or, God forbid, you made an army comprised of only the best units in the game, aka Doomstack, or if you've ever outkitted your character to basically become unstoppable on the battlefield, then you are a filthy cheeser. If you don't have at the very least 2 of each unit type you have available to you in your armies, you are cheesing the game. And I would even go so far as to say you're exploiting it, using tactics and army builds that the poor developers didn't have time to implement countermeasures for with the AI. I mean, really? When in our history have you ever seen armies comprised mostly of range units? It is utterly unthinkable. Why, our ancestors would never stoop so low as to use underhanded tactics like these. Then the next example is pushing numbers beyond what they were intended to go. If you have ever played a game where you could improve a single stat, a single bonus, or a single ability to its absolute limit to get as big a number as possible, well, if you're playing a game like Path of Exile 2, then that is perfectly acceptable and encouraged by the community. After all, a bigger number equals more dopamine and results in a better overall experience. Why settle for some mediocre damage output when you can just delete everything off the map in an extremely satisfying way? And very obviously, this is not cheese. Rather, it is just pushing the game's mechanics to their absolute limit. But if you've ever stacked bonuses in Warhammer 3, then you are an abusive piece of cheeser filth. How dare you try to get unkillable units? How dare you increase the ammunition of your units? How dare you increase the damage of your units? How dare you build your territory faster than the cheating AI? And worst of all, how dare you increase your economy to such amounts where you get so much money you don't even know what to do with it? This is such a heinous exploitation of the game's mechanics. Such disrespect for the developer's oversight when designing this game. And worst of all, such an insult against humanity itself, as no real-life person would ever increase their wealth beyond what they could possibly ever need. And lastly, we have dodging attacks. When a boss is flashing a big red indicator, it is obvious the game is telling you that you should try and not get hit by this. When playing a MOBA game and the enemy tries to hit you with a skill shot, it is only natural that you will dodge it and waste the enemy's resources. Or when playing Age of Empires and an enemy has an artillery piece that is shooting at you, well, you will obviously try to dodge its attacks, so that your units don't get hit and demolished by it. This is obviously not cheese, but rather skill-based gameplay. However, if you ever try to do this in Warhammer 3, you are the absolute scum of the earth. How dare you bring skill-based gameplay into this franchise? How dare you try and dodge range unit attacks? How dare you waste the AI's ammunition on the battlefield? Don't you know that the developers of this game have spent such a long time trying to perfect the AI, getting it to use its units amazingly well, only for you to come in here with your cheese and exploits and to ruin it all for them? No, your units should get hit by enemy attacks and you should never move them out of the way. Because if you do, that is cheese, and our ancestors would never stand for that. I mean, when have you ever seen historical battles fought where people would try to dodge enemy missile fire, or had employed tactics that would intentionally waste enemy ammunition? Why, through our entire history, this has never happened. My ancestors took those arrows to the face like real men, and I will not disgrace them by dodging them in this game. Thank you very much. And these are just some of the most common cheese complaints I get in both my comment section and read on Detail or Reddit. But I'm sure there are many more such examples. And fortunately for us, we have our lactose intolerant warriors always here, ready to enlighten us on what is and isn't cheese. So I hope this video helped you identify and avoid ever potentially cheesing in your games and smearing your name in the annals of history as a heinous cheeser.
Khorne fights as one.